Settle into the sleepy mind channel, where tonight we travel to a place that almost seems impossible until you see it with your own eyes. Hidden on a small Caribbean island lies a sheltered bay where darkness appears to come alive. Every stroke of a paddle leaves a glowing ribbon across the water. Fish create brilliant blue trails, and even a raindrop can awaken a brief flash of living light. Mosquito Bay is entirely real, carefully studied, and recognized as one of the brightest examples of natural bioluminescence ever discovered. Its display is created by countless microscopic organisms in the water, each one too small to see with the naked eye. If you enjoy videos like these, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. For all night listening, explore the playlist, where you will find more relaxing journeys through history, science, and the natural world. These documentaries offer calm, continuous listening at any time. Our destination is Mosquito Bay, officially known as Bahia Mosquito, on the small island of Vieques, just off the eastern coast of Puerto Rico in the warm Caribbean Sea. During the daylight hours, there is very little to suggest that this peaceful stretch of water is unlike thousands of other tropical bays. The shoreline is wrapped in dense mangrove forests, whose tangled roots reach into the shallow water below. Gentle trade winds move softly through the glossy green leaves, while seabirds circle overhead searching for fish. The water itself appears calm and inviting, reflecting the bright Caribbean sky, with only the occasional ripple crossing its surface. Visitors arriving during the afternoon often wonder why people travel from across the globe to visit what seems to be a quiet tropical inlet. They admire the surrounding landscape, breathe the warm salt air, and perhaps notice the remarkable stillness of the protected bay. But nothing prepares them for the transformation that begins after the sun finally slips below the horizon. As evening settles over Vieques, the entire atmosphere begins changing almost imperceptibly. The brilliant blue sky slowly softens into shades of gold, orange, and deep violet before fading into a rich tropical night. The mangrove forest becomes a dark silhouette against the last glow of sunset, while one by one the first stars begin appearing overhead. Far from the bright lights of large cities, the Caribbean sky reveals astonishing detail. The sounds of the day gradually fade as the evening chorus of insects begins along the shoreline. Gentle waves lap quietly against the mangrove roots, and the entire bay seems to settle into an almost perfect stillness. A kayak eases away from the shoreline, barely disturbing the calm water. Another paddle stroke creates another glowing ribbon, followed by another, until every movement leaves behind streams of shimmering light. A small fish darts beneath the kayak, tracing what looks like a glowing comet through the darkness. Tiny shrimp scatter through the shallow water, each one leaving sparkling trails that vanish within seconds. Even the droplets falling from the raised paddle glow for a brief instant before disappearing into the bay once more. The water has not changed color, nor is it reflecting the stars above. Those experiencing Mosquito Bay for the first time often fall completely silent, not because there is nothing to say, but because the experience is unlike anything they have ever witnessed before. The light does not come from the water itself, hidden minerals, or underwater plants. Every flash is produced by living organisms so small that hundreds of thousands can exist within a single gallon of water. During the daytime, that water appears perfectly clear. Suspended within it are microscopic organisms, known as dinoflagellates. These tiny single-celled creatures float with the currents as they feed, reproduce, and respond to changing conditions. Together, they create one of the brightest natural light displays on Earth. Scientists have measured exceptionally high concentrations in Mosquito Bay. Each disturbance activates thousands of brief flashes at once, blending them into streams of blue light. The species responsible for this remarkable phenomenon is called Pyrodinium bahamense, one member of a much larger group of microscopic marine organisms known as dinoflagellates. Although the name may sound unfamiliar, these tiny organisms have been part of Earth's oceans for millions of years. They drift through warm coastal waters around the world, playing important roles in marine ecosystems that most people never realize exist. Some species quietly support ocean food webs, while others occasionally produce harmful algal blooms under certain environmental conditions. A select few possess one of the most extraordinary abilities found anywhere in nature. They are capable of producing their own light through an elegant chemical reaction that unfolds inside a single microscopic cell. As we continue our journey, we will leave the broad beauty of the glowing bay behind and slowly enter the hidden world of these invisible organisms, discovering how creatures too small to be seen have transformed one quiet Caribbean bay into a place where science and wonder meet beneath a sky filled with stars. The invisible organisms responsible for the glowing waters of Mosquito Bay belong to an ancient group of life known as dinoflagellates. Although their scientific name may sound complicated, their story begins with something remarkably simple. Each one is a single living cell, complete unto itself. There are no organs, no nervous system, and no body larger than a fraction of a millimeter. Yet inside that tiny cell exists everything required to gather energy, respond to its surroundings, reproduce, and, under the right conditions, create a flash of brilliant blue light. Dinoflagellates have been drifting through the world's oceans for millions of years, long before people ever paddled quietly through Mosquito Bay. Fossils of their distant ancestors have been found in ancient marine sediments dating back well over 200 million years, placing them among many of the creatures that shared the oceans during the age of the dinosaurs. Throughout those immense spans of time, continents slowly shifted across the surface of the Earth, mountain ranges rose and eroded away, and countless marine species appeared before disappearing forever. Through all of those changes, these tiny drifting organisms continued their quiet existence, carried wherever winds, tides, and ocean currents chose to take them. Although we often imagine microscopic life as simple, the truth is far more remarkable. Viewed beneath a powerful microscope, a single dinoflagellate reveals a surprisingly elegant structure. Its outer covering forms a protective shell, made from thin plates of cellulose fitted together almost like tiny pieces of armor. Extending from the cell are two slender whip-like structures called flagella. One wraps around the middle of the organism like a belt, while the other trails behind it. By beating these flagella in carefully coordinated patterns, the dinoflagellate slowly rotates and moves through the surrounding water. The word dinoflagellate actually reflects this unusual movement. It combines an ancient Greek word meaning whirling with the Latin word for whip. Under the microscope, their motion appears almost like a gentle spinning dance as they slowly rotate through the water, while their tiny flagella propel them forward. Most dinoflagellates spend the daylight hours carrying out another remarkable task. Like plants growing in a forest or grass covering an open meadow, many species capture energy from sunlight through photosynthesis. Tiny structures inside their cells contain chlorophyll, the same green pigment found in leaves, allowing them to transform sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water into the energy needed for life. In this way, they become microscopic floating plants, despite belonging to a group that shares characteristics with both plant-like and animal-like organisms. They drift freely rather than remaining rooted in one place, harvesting sunlight, while the currents slowly carry them through the warm tropical waters. Not every dinoflagellate lives in exactly the same way. Some species rely almost entirely on photosynthesis, while others hunt even smaller microscopic organisms for food. A few are capable of combining both strategies, producing energy from sunlight when conditions are favorable, while also feeding upon other tiny organisms whenever opportunities arise. This flexibility has helped dinoflagellates survive for immense periods of Earth's history, adapting to changing oceans and shifting climates that would have challenged many less versatile forms of life. The species that dominates Mosquito Bay, Pyridinium bahamense, thrives especially well in warm, sheltered coastal waters. Unlike the open ocean, where powerful currents constantly mix enormous volumes of water together, Mosquito Bay provides a protected environment where these microscopic organisms can gradually build into extraordinary numbers. The surrounding mangrove forest acts almost like a natural barrier, reducing the strength of incoming waves, while the narrow entrance to the bay limits how quickly water flows in and out with the tides. These gentle conditions allow the dinoflagellates to remain concentrated instead of being swept away into the wider Caribbean Sea. Scientists studying the bay have often described it as a nearly perfect natural nursery for these remarkable organisms. Warm tropical temperatures remain relatively stable throughout much of the year, encouraging steady growth. Fallen mangrove leaves slowly break down within the shallow water, releasing nutrients that help support the microscopic food web upon which the ecosystem depends. Calm conditions allow the dinoflagellates to reproduce successfully, while limited water exchange prevents their enormous populations from becoming diluted. None of these factors alone would create the glowing phenomenon. It is their combination, working together year after year, that has allowed Mosquito Bay to become one of the brightest bioluminescent locations ever recorded. Yet despite these ideal conditions, visitors exploring the bay during the daytime rarely suspect anything unusual is taking place beneath the surface. The water often appears dark because of its depth and the shadow cast by the surrounding mangrove forest. There are no obvious signs of the millions of microscopic organisms drifting quietly below. Boats pass overhead without revealing them. Fish swim through enormous invisible clouds of dinoflagellates without attracting attention. Even standing at the shoreline and gazing into the water reveals little beyond gentle ripples reflecting the Caribbean sky. The remarkable glow that makes Mosquito Bay famous is known as bioluminescence, a word that simply means living light. It describes the ability of certain organisms to produce light through a natural chemical reaction occurring entirely within their own bodies. Unlike the light from a campfire, which comes from burning wood, or the glow of a traditional light bulb, which is produced by heating a tiny filament until it shines, bioluminescence creates light without generating significant heat. Scientists sometimes refer to it as cold light, because almost all of the energy produced during the reaction becomes visible light instead of being lost as heat. This remarkable efficiency has fascinated researchers for generations, because very few human-made light sources can match the elegance of the natural process. Inside each microscopic dinoflagellate, are tiny structures specially designed for producing light. These structures contain a remarkable chemical called luciferin. When the organism is disturbed, whether by the movement of a fish, the stroke of a paddle, or even the gentle swirl created by a hand passing through the water, an intricate chain of events begins almost instantly. The disturbance changes pressure inside the tiny cell, sending a signal that activates another substance known as luciferase. Acting together with oxygen already present inside the organism, these chemicals trigger a reaction that releases energy in the form of brilliant blue light. The entire event lasts only a fraction of a second before the cell quietly returns to darkness, waiting until the next disturbance awakens another tiny flash. What makes this process even more astonishing is its incredible speed. The microscopic organism does not pause to decide whether it should glow. There is no nervous system making conscious decisions and no brain directing the response. Instead, the entire reaction happens automatically. Within moments of being disturbed, thousands of tiny chemical reactions begin inside the cell, producing a brilliant pulse of blue light before ending almost as quickly as they began. Scientists have spent decades studying exactly why dinoflagellates produce light at all. At first glance, glowing might seem like a strange survival strategy. After all, creating light requires energy, and every living organism must use its energy carefully. The leading explanation is known as the burglar alarm hypothesis. Imagine a small fish swimming through a cloud of dinoflagellates under the cover of darkness. As it moves, thousands of microscopic organisms suddenly flash brilliant blue, illuminating the predator's position. That glowing display may attract the attention of a much larger fish searching for food. In other words, the dinoflagellates are not trying to frighten away their attacker directly. Instead, they may be calling attention to it, increasing the chances that something even larger will arrive and chase the predator away. It is an elegant example of survival through indirect defense, one tiny organism using light to recruit an even larger hunter. Although this explanation is supported by considerable evidence, scientists continue investigating other possibilities as well. Some researchers believe the flashes may also startle small predators, just long enough for the dinoflagellates to escape. Others suggest the light could help discourage repeated feeding in dense populations, making predators less likely to remain in areas where every movement announces their presence. Nature often favors adaptations serving more than one purpose, and it is entirely possible that bioluminescence provides several different advantages depending upon the circumstances. Like many aspects of the natural world, the complete story continues unfolding as new research adds fresh pieces to the puzzle. One reason the light appears such a vivid shade of blue is because blue wavelengths travel exceptionally well through seawater. Colors do not behave equally beneath the ocean surface. Red light is absorbed surprisingly quickly, disappearing within only a few meters of depth. Orange and yellow gradually fade as well, leaving blue and green wavelengths able to travel much farther through the water. Over millions of years, many marine organisms evolved to produce blue light because it carries efficiently through their underwater environment. The brilliant glow seen in Mosquito Bay is therefore not only beautiful, but also perfectly suited to the physical properties of the sea itself. If it were possible to shrink down to the size of a dinoflagellate, the bay would appear unimaginably different. Instead of a calm tropical inlet, the surrounding water would become an enormous three-dimensional world filled with drifting particles, microscopic plants, tiny animals, and invisible currents flowing in every direction. Every gentle ripple at the surface would resemble a powerful wave passing overhead. Fish gliding peacefully through the bay would appear as enormous moving shadows, while the slow stroke of a kayak paddle would create swirling currents large enough to reshape the entire microscopic landscape. For the tiny dinoflagellates drifting within this hidden world, every passing movement represents a significant event, and every brief flash of light becomes part of an ancient language of survival that has existed for millions of years. From the shoreline, however, none of this remarkable activity can be seen directly. Visitors simply witness glowing trails dancing across the water beneath a sky filled with stars, rarely realizing that each ribbon of light is actually composed of countless individual flashes produced by microscopic organisms responding one cell at a time. It is one of nature's most elegant reminders that extraordinary beauty often begins with the smallest forms of life, quietly carrying out ancient processes hidden far beyond the limits of human vision. While the glowing waters of Mosquito Bay capture most of the attention, the bay itself is only one part of a much larger ecosystem that has been quietly developing for thousands of years. Without that surrounding environment, the brilliant display might never exist at all. Every glowing flash depends not only on the microscopic dinoflagellates, but also on the shape of the bay, the warm Caribbean climate, the gentle movement of the tides, and perhaps most importantly, the remarkable forests of red mangroves that line much of the shoreline. These trees may not appear especially unusual at first glance, yet they serve as the foundation upon which the entire ecosystem depends. Red mangroves are unlike most trees because they have adapted to live where the land and the sea meet. Instead of growing in fresh soil far from the ocean, they thrive in salty coastal waters where many other plants could never survive. Their roots stretch outward in graceful arches before disappearing beneath the surface, creating dense networks that stabilize the shoreline against waves and storms. At low tide, these roots resemble the legs of enormous wooden spiders standing patiently in the shallow water. At high tide, much of the network disappears beneath the surface, becoming an underwater forest that provides shelter for countless forms of marine life. These remarkable root systems perform many important jobs at the same time. They trap sediment carried by tides and heavy rains, helping prevent valuable soil from washing away into the open sea. They slow the movement of water entering the bay, reducing erosion while creating calm conditions that allow delicate organisms to flourish. Small fish seek refuge among the tangled roots, protected from larger predators patrolling deeper water. Juvenile crabs, shrimp, sea snails, and countless tiny invertebrates spend the earliest stages of their lives hidden within this natural maze. For many species throughout the Caribbean, mangrove forests serve as enormous underwater nurseries where young animals can grow before venturing into coral reefs or the open ocean. The trees also contribute something less obvious, but equally important, to the glowing waters of Mosquito Bay. Throughout the year, mangrove leaves naturally fall into the shallow water below. At first, they simply drift among the roots, carried gently by the tides. Gradually, they begin breaking down as bacteria, fungi, and tiny marine organisms slowly recycle the fallen leaves back into the ecosystem. This process releases nutrients into the surrounding water, nourishing microscopic life throughout the bay. Those nutrients help support the complex food web upon which the dinoflagellates ultimately depend. Scientists often describe healthy ecosystems as intricate webs rather than simple chains, because every part depends upon countless others. Remove one important element, and unexpected consequences ripple throughout the entire community. Mosquito Bay illustrates this beautifully. The mangroves shelter the shoreline. Their roots calm the water. Fallen leaves provide nutrients. Microscopic organisms flourish. Small fish feed among the roots. Larger fish arrive to hunt them. Birds search the shallows, while crabs and shrimp recycle organic material along the bottom. The glowing dinoflagellates are only one remarkable thread woven into a much larger living tapestry that has developed over centuries. The shape of the bay itself also plays a surprisingly important role. Unlike an open stretch of coastline where waves and powerful currents constantly mix the water, Mosquito Bay is naturally protected. A relatively narrow entrance connects it with the surrounding Caribbean Sea, limiting how quickly water flows in and out with each tide. This restricted circulation allows the microscopic dinoflagellates to remain concentrated instead of being carried away by stronger ocean currents. If the entrance were much wider, fresh seawater would continuously dilute their population, making the spectacular glow far less intense. Nature has shaped the bay almost like a sheltered bowl, creating ideal conditions for these tiny organisms to thrive. Warm tropical temperatures provide another essential ingredient. Throughout much of the year, the waters surrounding Vieques remain comfortably warm, encouraging steady growth among countless microscopic organisms. Unlike regions where harsh winters dramatically slow biological activity, the Caribbean climate allows life to continue at a relatively consistent pace. The dinoflagellates benefit from this stability, reproducing under conditions that remain favorable through much of the year. Combined with the protected waters and abundant nutrients, the climate helps maintain the extraordinary concentrations responsible for the glowing display. Rainfall also influences the delicate balance within the bay. Heavy tropical showers wash fresh water into the surrounding mangrove forests before it slowly mixes with the salt water below. Too much rainfall can temporarily alter the salinity of the bay, while extended periods of drought may change it in the opposite direction. The dinoflagellates are remarkably well adapted to their environment, but like all living organisms, they thrive only within certain conditions. Scientists carefully monitor these seasonal changes because even small shifts in temperature, salinity, or nutrient levels can influence the brightness of the bioluminescent display from one year to the next. Viewed from above, Mosquito Bay appears almost peaceful in its simplicity. Yet beneath that calm surface, countless interactions unfold every moment. Trees nourish microscopic life. Tiny organisms feed larger ones. Currents transport nutrients, while roots shelter young fish. Every part contributes quietly to the whole, creating an ecosystem so carefully balanced that millions of invisible cells can transform darkness itself into shimmering blue light. As the sun rises over Mosquito Bay the following morning, almost every sign of the previous night's extraordinary display disappears. The brilliant blue trails vanish, the shimmering ribbons of light fade completely, and the water once again takes on the familiar shades of turquoise and deep green found throughout the Caribbean. Visitors seeing the bay for the first time during daylight often find it difficult to believe that only hours earlier it seemed filled with liquid stars. The transformation is so complete that if someone had arrived without knowing its reputation, they might pass by without giving the quiet inlet a second thought. Yet beneath the calm surface, the microscopic community responsible for the glowing display remains just as abundant as it was the night before. The only thing that has changed is the presence of sunlight. For the dinoflagellates, daylight marks the beginning of an entirely different routine. Rather than producing light, they devote much of the day to gathering energy from the sun. Like tiny floating solar panels, many of these organisms contain chloroplasts filled with chlorophyll, allowing them to perform photosynthesis in much the same way as the leaves of trees or blades of grass. Sunlight provides the energy needed to convert carbon dioxide and water into sugars that fuel every aspect of their lives. This daily cycle has repeated itself for countless generations. As dawn spreads across the Caribbean, millions of dinoflagellates slowly adjust to the changing light. Throughout the warm daylight hours, they drift with gentle currents while continuing their microscopic work almost entirely unnoticed. The bay appears peaceful from above, but beneath the surface, an invisible world remains constantly active. Tiny crustaceans paddle through the water searching for food. Microscopic algae divide and multiply in the sunlight, and countless bacteria recycle nutrients released by fallen mangrove leaves. Every drop of water contains an astonishing variety of life, all interacting within an ecosystem so small that it escapes ordinary human vision. The relationship between sunlight and darkness is one of the reasons Mosquito Bay feels so magical to visitors. During the day, science hides itself almost completely. Only after darkness returns does the hidden world suddenly reveal itself. In many ways, the bay teaches an important lesson about nature itself. Some of the most remarkable processes happening around us remain invisible until the conditions are exactly right for us to notice them. The glow is not something that suddenly appears each evening. It has always been there, waiting quietly for darkness to uncover it. Scientists have learned that the dinoflagellates also follow internal biological rhythms linked to the regular cycle of day and night. Like many living organisms, they possess natural clocks that help coordinate their activities over a 24-hour period. During daylight, they prepare for photosynthesis and growth, while after sunset, their ability to produce light becomes much more active. These internal rhythms continue even when conditions change, demonstrating that the tiny organisms are responding not only to the immediate environment, but also to biological patterns that have evolved over millions of years. It is extraordinary that a single microscopic cell can maintain such precise timing without possessing a brain or nervous system. The changing light also transforms every other part of the bay. During the bright hours, herons and egrets carefully stalk the shallow shoreline, watching patiently for small fish moving among the mangrove roots. Pelicans glide overhead before folding their wings and plunging into deeper water in search of their next meal. Small lizards bask on sun-warmed branches, while fiddler crabs emerge from their burrows to forage across muddy flats exposed by the tide. The entire landscape feels lively and familiar, filled with the everyday sounds of a tropical coastline. As evening approaches once again, those daytime routines gradually begin to change. Birds return to sheltered branches, daytime fish seek cover among the mangrove roots, and nocturnal creatures quietly prepare to emerge. The bay itself seems to grow calmer with every passing minute. Gentle trade winds soften as the last sunlight fades from the western sky, leaving only the quiet rustle of mangrove leaves and the occasional splash of a fish disturbing the surface. Beneath the water, however, millions of dinoflagellates are approaching, the moment when their remarkable adaptation will once again become visible. This repeating rhythm gives Mosquito Bay an almost timeless quality. Sunrise, daylight, sunset, and darkness arrive in steady succession, just as they have for thousands of years. The glowing display is not a rare event reserved for special occasions, but part of the bay's ordinary nightly routine, provided the environmental conditions remain favorable. Every evening offers another opportunity for the microscopic world to briefly announce its presence before returning once again to silence. Standing quietly along the shoreline as twilight deepens, it becomes easier to appreciate just how many natural rhythms are unfolding at the same time. The tides continue their slow rise and fall under the influence of the moon. Mangrove leaves gently sway with the evening breeze. Microscopic organisms prepare for another night of glowing responses to the slightest disturbance. Above, the first stars begin appearing one by one across the darkening sky. For thousands of years, the glowing waters of Mosquito Bay have inspired curiosity among everyone fortunate enough to witness them. Long before scientists understood the chemistry of bioluminescence, or microscopes revealed the tiny organisms responsible for the brilliant blue light, the bay was already known to the people who called these islands home. Like many extraordinary natural places around the world, Mosquito Bay possesses both a scientific story and a human story, each adding another layer to our appreciation of this remarkable corner of the Caribbean. The first known inhabitants of Puerto Rico and the surrounding islands were the Taíno people, an indigenous culture whose ancestors arrived in the Caribbean many centuries before European ships crossed the Atlantic Ocean. They became skilled farmers, fishermen, navigators, and craftspeople, developing thriving communities across Puerto Rico, Vieques, Hispaniola, Cuba, and many neighboring islands. The sea was not simply a source of food for the Taíno. It shaped nearly every aspect of daily life. They traveled between islands in carefully crafted wooden canoes, gathered fish and shellfish from coastal waters, and developed an intimate understanding of tides, reefs, winds, and changing weather. Every bay, river, and stretch of coastline carried its own importance, and glowing waters like those found in Mosquito Bay would almost certainly have been familiar to generations who regularly paddled through these protected inlets after sunset. Although no written Taíno records survive describing the bay in detail, archaeologists have found evidence of long-standing indigenous settlements throughout Vieques. Shell middens, pottery fragments, stone tools, and ceremonial objects reveal that people lived on the island for many centuries before European arrival. It is easy to imagine experienced fishermen returning home beneath a moonless sky, their paddles quietly awakening ribbons of blue light with every stroke. Everything began changing in the late 15th century when European exploration reached the Caribbean. During his second voyage across the Atlantic, Christopher Columbus sailed through these waters in the year 1493, opening a period of profound change for Puerto Rico and the surrounding islands. Spanish explorers gradually established settlements throughout the region, bringing new languages, customs, crops, animals, and technologies. At the same time, indigenous communities experienced devastating disease, conflict, and forced labor that dramatically reduced their populations over the following decades. The Caribbean entered a new chapter of history, one that forever changed both its people and its landscapes. Vieques itself remained quieter than many neighboring islands for much of its early colonial history. Its relatively small size and limited natural harbors meant that it developed more slowly than larger population centers elsewhere in Puerto Rico. Farming, fishing, and small settlements gradually appeared, while the surrounding waters continued following the same timeless rhythms they always had. The mangrove forests remained healthy, the protected bay retained its sheltered character, and every evening the microscopic dinoflagellates quietly transformed darkness into living light, completely indifferent to the changing civilizations around them. As maritime trade expanded across the Caribbean, sailors occasionally recorded unusual glowing waters encountered during nighttime voyages. Long before the science of bioluminescence was understood, many believed such glowing seas were mysterious or even supernatural. Wooden ships crossing tropical waters sometimes left luminous wakes stretching far behind them, while schools of fish racing beneath the surface appeared surrounded by ghostly blue halos. Without microscopes or modern chemistry, these glowing displays naturally inspired stories, speculation, and wonder. It would take centuries before scientists finally discovered that invisible living organisms were responsible for the mysterious light. By the 19th century, naturalists traveling through the Caribbean had begun documenting unusual marine phenomena with increasing care. Improved scientific instruments and growing interest in marine biology encouraged researchers to study coastal ecosystems in greater detail than ever before. Samples collected from glowing bays gradually revealed the presence of microscopic dinoflagellates, allowing scientists to connect the mysterious nighttime displays with living organisms rather than minerals or strange chemical properties of the water itself. Each discovery added another piece to the puzzle, replacing centuries of speculation with careful observation, while preserving the sense of wonder that had always surrounded these remarkable places. Even today, many visitors experience something similar to those early explorers. Standing beside Mosquito Bay after sunset, it is almost impossible not to feel a quiet sense of amazement as the first glowing ripples appear beneath the stars. Although modern science explains exactly how the light is produced, understanding the chemistry never diminishes the experience. If anything, knowing that millions of microscopic living cells are working together to create the glowing water often makes the display feel even more extraordinary. The wonder comes not from mystery alone, but from appreciating just how elegant nature can be when countless small processes combine to produce something far greater than the sum of their parts. The history of Mosquito Bay therefore stretches across many different timescales at once. Human history here spans thousands of years, from the first indigenous communities to modern conservation efforts. The mangrove forests have quietly grown and renewed themselves for centuries. The dinoflagellates trace their ancestry back millions of years, surviving dramatic changes in oceans and climates long before humans appeared. Beyond all of that, the chemical reactions producing each tiny flash of blue light occur in less than a second, disappearing almost as quickly as they appear. Together, these overlapping histories remind us that every glowing ripple across the bay represents a meeting of ancient biology, natural history, and human curiosity, all unfolding together beneath the quiet Caribbean night. For centuries, the glowing waters of Mosquito Bay remained a local wonder, admired by fishermen, sailors, and the people who lived along the shores of Vieques. It was not until the 20th century that scientists began studying the bay with the careful attention it deserved. Improvements in marine biology, chemistry, and microscopy finally allowed researchers to examine the microscopic world hidden within every drop of water. What they discovered only deepened the mystery. Instead, millions of living dinoflagellates were working independently, each tiny organism creating its own flash of light. Collecting samples from Mosquito Bay required remarkable patience. Researchers often ventured onto the water after sunset, when the glowing display was at its brightest. Water was carefully gathered in clean containers and transported back to laboratories where the microscopic organisms could be examined under controlled conditions. During the day, these samples appeared completely ordinary. The water looked almost identical to any other seawater collected from tropical coastlines. Viewed beneath a microscope, the glowing cells appeared almost delicate. Scientists observed how individual organisms responded when disturbed, producing brief pulses of blue light before returning to darkness. By repeating these observations thousands of times under different conditions, researchers gradually uncovered the chemical reactions responsible for the glow and learned how temperature, salinity, nutrients, and water movement influence the health of the population. As scientific understanding grew, another remarkable fact became clear. Bioluminescent bays are actually quite rare. Although glowing organisms exist throughout many parts of the world's oceans, only a handful of locations possess the perfect combination of environmental conditions needed to create spectacular displays visible from the shoreline. Warm water alone is not enough. Neither are healthy dinoflagellate populations, protected coastlines, or surrounding mangrove forests by themselves. Every important ingredient must exist together in careful balance. Remove one element from the system, and the brilliant glow begins to fade. Today, only a small number of bioluminescent bays remain famous enough to attract visitors from around the world. Several are found in Puerto Rico, including Mosquito Bay on Vieques, Laguna Grande near Fajardo, and La Parguera on the island's southwestern coast. Other glowing bays exist in scattered locations across the Caribbean and beyond, yet few equal the extraordinary brightness measured in Mosquito Bay. Scientists believe its unusual combination of sheltered geography, warm tropical climate, healthy mangrove forests, and exceptionally dense populations of Pyridinium bahamense creates conditions that are difficult to duplicate anywhere else on Earth. The remarkable brightness of Mosquito Bay eventually earned international recognition. Guinness World Records recognized Mosquito Bay as the brightest bioluminescent bay, reporting up to 700,000 dinoflagellates per gallon of water. This recognition was not based upon personal opinion or beautiful photographs alone. Researchers measured the concentration of dinoflagellates within the water and documented the exceptional intensity of the glowing display compared with other bioluminescent locations around the world. The award reflected decades of careful observation and confirmed what local residents had appreciated for generations. The quiet bay on Vieques possessed something truly extraordinary. Recognition brought new opportunities, but it also introduced new responsibilities. As more visitors arrived hoping to experience the glowing waters, local communities and environmental organizations realized that protecting the bay had become just as important as sharing it. Unlike many tourist destinations built around permanent landmarks, Mosquito Bay depends entirely upon the continued health of a delicate living ecosystem. The glowing display cannot be repaired if damaged like a building or a road. It survives only as long as the microscopic organisms, mangrove forests, and surrounding waters remain healthy together. This understanding gradually shaped the way visitors experience the bay today. Rather than encouraging large crowds aboard noisy motorboats, many tours emphasize quiet kayaking through the calm water. Small groups move gently across the bay, with minimal disturbance, allowing guests to experience the glowing trails while reducing unnecessary impacts on the fragile ecosystem. The experience becomes more than simply observing a beautiful natural wonder. It becomes an opportunity to understand how delicate ecological balance can create something truly unforgettable. Perhaps that balance is what makes Mosquito Bay so remarkable. Instead, they emerge through countless relationships, quietly working together over thousands of years. The mangrove forests shelter the shoreline. Warm tropical waters nurture microscopic life. Protected geography allows enormous populations of dinoflagellates to flourish. Gentle darkness reveals their hidden light. Every glowing trail seen from a kayak is therefore not simply the work of one tiny organism, but the visible expression of an entire ecosystem functioning in remarkable harmony beneath the Caribbean night. Although Mosquito Bay has become world famous for its glowing waters, maintaining such a remarkable ecosystem requires constant care. Unlike a mountain or a canyon, which can endure enormous changes while remaining largely the same, a bioluminescent bay depends upon millions of living organisms existing in careful balance. Small changes in water quality, shoreline development, pollution, or even excessive artificial light can influence the delicate conditions that allow the dinoflagellates to thrive. Protecting the glow therefore means protecting the entire ecosystem, from the microscopic organisms floating in the water to the mangrove forests standing quietly along the shore. One of the greatest advantages Mosquito Bay possesses is its relatively undeveloped setting. Much of Vieques remains far less crowded than many Caribbean destinations, allowing large stretches of coastline to retain their natural character. The mangrove forests surrounding the bay continue performing the same essential roles they have for centuries. Their roots stabilize the shoreline, slow the movement of water, and provide shelter for countless marine animals. Fallen leaves continue feeding the microscopic food web beneath the surface, while the protected shape of the bay helps retain the enormous populations of dinoflagellates that make the glowing display possible. Every healthy mangrove tree contributes quietly to a phenomenon that most visitors never realize depends upon it. Artificial light presents another challenge that might not seem obvious at first. The dinoflagellates continue producing light regardless of whether people can see it, but bright lights from buildings, vehicles, or boats make the glowing water much more difficult to observe. Human eyes naturally adjust to darkness over several minutes. Once fully adapted, even faint flashes of blue become remarkably visible against the black surface of the bay. Introduce strong white lights, however, and that sensitivity is quickly lost. For this reason, guides leading nighttime tours often ask visitors to avoid using flashlights or bright mobile phone screens while out on the water. Allowing darkness to settle naturally over the bay helps preserve one of the most unforgettable parts of the experience. Motorized boats are also carefully managed within Mosquito Bay. Large boat engines not only create noise, but also stir sediments from the bottom, increase water turbulence, and introduce fuel or oil that could affect the fragile environment if not carefully controlled. Kayaks, on the other hand, move almost silently across the surface. Their gentle paddles create just enough disturbance to awaken the glowing dinoflagellates without placing unnecessary stress on the ecosystem. This slower pace offers another unexpected benefit. Visitors naturally become quieter as they glide through the darkness, allowing the sounds of the mangrove forest, distant waves, and tropical night to become part of the experience itself. Education has become one of the most valuable conservation tools available. Many people arrive expecting only a beautiful nighttime attraction, but leave with a much deeper appreciation for the complex ecosystem supporting it. Local guides often explain how microscopic organisms produce light, why mangrove forests are so important, and how visitors themselves can help protect the bay simply by respecting its natural rhythms. Understanding often leads to appreciation, and appreciation frequently inspires conservation. When people recognize that every glowing ripple depends upon thousands of years of ecological balance, they are far more likely to value the careful stewardship required to preserve it. Scientists continue monitoring the health of Mosquito Bay throughout the year. Water samples are collected regularly to measure the concentration of dinoflagellates and observe changes in water chemistry. Researchers monitor temperature, salinity, nutrient levels, rainfall, and the overall condition of the mangrove forests. Because the glowing display depends upon so many interacting factors, long-term observations are essential for understanding how the ecosystem responds to both natural events and human influences. Every new set of measurements adds another entry to an ongoing scientific record that helps guide future conservation efforts. Nature itself also introduces challenges from time to time. Powerful hurricanes occasionally sweep across the Caribbean, bringing heavy rain, strong winds, and dramatic changes to coastal environments. Such storms may temporarily alter the salinity of the bay, stir sediments from the bottom, damage mangrove forests, or reduce dinoflagellate populations for a period of time. Yet one of the remarkable qualities of healthy ecosystems is their resilience. Given time and suitable conditions, the mangroves regenerate, microscopic populations recover, and the familiar blue glow gradually returns. These natural cycles remind us that while the bay is delicate, it is also remarkably capable of renewal when its fundamental ecological balance remains intact. Climate patterns influence the bay in more subtle ways as well. Years with unusually heavy rainfall may produce different conditions from years marked by extended drought. Ocean temperatures naturally fluctuate from season to season, while larger climate cycles influence weather across the entire Caribbean. Scientists continue studying how these long-term changes affect Mosquito Bay, because understanding natural variation is essential for protecting the ecosystem well into the future. The glowing waters visible today represent the result of countless environmental interactions unfolding over months, years, and even decades. Standing quietly in a kayak beneath a sky filled with stars, it is easy to forget just how much quiet work is taking place beyond what we can see. Mangrove roots continue filtering the shoreline. Fish move silently beneath the glowing surface, while crabs search among the submerged roots. Researchers collect careful observations, local communities protect the shoreline, and guides share the remarkable story of the bay with each new generation of visitors. Together, these natural and human efforts help preserve one of Earth's most extraordinary spectacles, ensuring that long after the final paddle stroke fades into darkness, millions of tiny living lights will continue transforming the quiet waters of Mosquito Bay into a shimmering galaxy beneath the Caribbean night. While Mosquito Bay is often considered the brightest bioluminescent bay on Earth, it is far from the only place where living organisms create light. Bioluminescence has evolved independently many different times throughout Earth's history, appearing in creatures that are only distantly related to one another. From tiny bacteria to enormous squid, from delicate jellyfish drifting through the open ocean to insects glowing above summer fields, nature has repeatedly discovered ways to produce light through chemistry, rather than heat. Scientists estimate that hundreds, and perhaps thousands, of species possess some form of bioluminescence. Perhaps the most familiar example is the firefly. On warm summer evenings across much of the world, these small beetles drift through fields and forests, flashing tiny signals into the darkness. Unlike the dinoflagellates of Mosquito Bay, fireflies do not glow because they have been disturbed. Instead, their flashes form an intricate language used to communicate with one another. Every species follows its own distinctive pattern of light, allowing males and females to recognize members of the same species, even when many different kinds of fireflies share the same habitat. Some produce slow rhythmic pulses, while others flash rapidly in carefully timed sequences. Entire meadows can seem to sparkle beneath the night sky as thousands of tiny lanterns drift silently through the warm evening air. Although both fireflies and dinoflagellates rely upon luciferin and luciferase to produce light, the details of their chemistry are surprisingly different. Evolution did not simply invent one universal system and distribute it throughout nature. Instead, different groups of organisms developed their own versions independently, modifying similar chemical principles to meet very different needs. This makes bioluminescence an extraordinary example of convergent evolution, where unrelated species arrive at similar solutions while following completely separate evolutionary paths. It is another reminder that nature often discovers remarkably elegant answers to the same challenge again and again. Far below the surface of the open ocean, bioluminescence becomes even more common than it is on land. In the deep sea, sunlight disappears completely after only a few hundred meters, leaving vast regions of permanent darkness. Yet these waters are anything but empty. Countless marine organisms generate their own light, creating one of the most extraordinary ecosystems on the planet. Scientists estimate that the majority of animals living in the deep ocean are capable of producing bioluminescence in some form. Fish, squid, shrimp, jellyfish, comb jellies, worms, and countless microscopic organisms illuminate the darkness with flashes, pulses, and gentle glows that serve many different purposes. Some deep-sea fish use glowing organs, called photophores, to camouflage themselves. Looking upward through the dim water, predators may search for the dark outline of prey, silhouetted against the faint sunlight filtering down from above. Certain fish solve this problem by producing soft blue light along the undersides of their bodies, matching the brightness of the distant surface and making themselves surprisingly difficult to see. Others employ light quite differently. The famous anglerfish carries a glowing lure extending from the front of its head, gently waving it through the darkness until curious prey swims close enough to be captured. What appears beautiful to one creature becomes a carefully designed hunting strategy for another. Squid have evolved equally remarkable uses for bioluminescence. Some species release glowing clouds into the surrounding water when threatened, creating brilliant distractions that confuse predators while the squid escapes into the darkness. Others possess intricate patterns of light, producing organs across their bodies, allowing them to communicate with one another or blend into the faint light filtering down from above. Even certain deep-sea shrimp eject glowing material into the water, much as a squid releases ink, producing temporary luminous clouds that distract attackers for just long enough to escape. Many species produce gentle blue or green light that slowly ripples through their transparent bodies. Unlike the sudden flashes seen in Mosquito Bay, these displays often appear softer and more continuous, creating the impression of floating lanterns drifting through the deep ocean. Scientists continue studying these remarkable organisms because their glowing proteins have become invaluable tools in biological research, helping researchers observe living cells in ways that were once impossible. Even forests possess their own forms of bioluminescence. In certain humid woodlands, particular species of fungi emit a soft green glow from decaying logs and fallen branches. The phenomenon is sometimes called foxfire, a name that has appeared in folklore for centuries. Unlike the bright flashes of fireflies or the shimmering waters of Mosquito Bay, glowing fungi produce a steady illumination that may continue throughout the night. Scientists believe this light may help attract insects that assist in spreading fungal spores, although research into its precise purpose continues. These diverse examples reveal an important truth. Bioluminescence is not one single phenomenon, but a collection of remarkable adaptations that evolved independently across many different branches of life. Some organisms use light to hunt, others use it to hide, communicate, defend themselves, or attract mates. The microscopic dinoflagellates drifting through Mosquito Bay represent only one beautiful expression of a much larger story, one that stretches from tropical forests to the deepest ocean trenches. Together, they remind us that nature has transformed darkness itself into a canvas upon which countless living organisms have learned to paint with light, each following its own ancient evolutionary path, while adding another brilliant chapter to one of the most fascinating stories in the natural world. Among all the places on Earth where bioluminescence can be found, Mosquito Bay remains exceptional because it brings together so many favorable conditions in one relatively small area. Scientists often explain that producing light is only one part of the equation. The glowing dinoflagellates must also exist in extraordinary numbers, the surrounding environment must remain stable, and the water must stay calm enough for those microscopic organisms to accumulate rather than being swept away by strong tides or ocean currents. Many coastal regions contain bioluminescent organisms, yet only a handful allow them to gather in concentrations dense enough to create the breathtaking displays that visitors experience in Vieques. One of the bay's greatest advantages is its natural geography. Viewed from above, Mosquito Bay resembles a gently curved pocket carved into the southern shoreline of Vieques. The entrance connecting it to the Caribbean Sea is relatively narrow, limiting the amount of water exchanged during each tidal cycle. Unlike broad open bays where waves and currents constantly flush the water, Mosquito Bay retains much of its microscopic community from day to day. This gentle circulation allows the population of Pyridinium bahamense to build steadily over time, creating densities rarely found elsewhere. The bay functions almost like a carefully protected bowl, where countless microscopic organisms can remain together instead of dispersing into the wider ocean. The surrounding island also plays an important role in maintaining this delicate balance. Vieques stretches for roughly 21 miles from east to west, with rolling hills rising through much of its interior. Although it is only a short distance from the main island of Puerto Rico, Vieques has preserved a much quieter atmosphere than many Caribbean destinations. Large portions of the island remain protected as wildlife refuges and natural reserves, providing habitat for numerous birds, reptiles, marine animals, and native plants. This relatively undeveloped landscape helps reduce many of the environmental pressures that often accompany rapid coastal development, allowing ecosystems such as Mosquito Bay to remain remarkably healthy. Trade winds blowing steadily across the Caribbean further shape the character of the island. These warm easterly breezes moderate temperatures throughout the year, bringing fresh ocean air while helping maintain the tropical climate that supports the bay's remarkable biological community. Afternoon showers occasionally drift across the island during the wetter months, nourishing the mangrove forests before the sunshine quickly returns. Throughout the year, temperatures remain comfortably warm, creating an environment where microscopic life can flourish almost continuously rather than being interrupted by long, cold winters. The tides, although relatively modest compared with many coastlines around the world, quietly influence the bay every single day. As seawater slowly rises and falls, nutrients move gently through the mangrove roots, while oxygen circulates throughout the shallow water. The narrow entrance prevents these tidal movements from becoming too powerful, preserving the sheltered conditions that allow the dinoflagellates to remain concentrated. It is another example of how multiple natural processes work together. The tides bring renewal without disrupting stability, while the bay's geography softens their strength just enough to maintain the delicate balance upon which the glowing display depends. Even the bottom of the bay contributes to this remarkable ecosystem. Beneath the calm surface lies a layer of soft sediment built gradually over thousands of years from tiny particles carried by rivers, tides, decaying plant material, and marine organisms. This rich organic layer supports countless bacteria and microscopic creatures that help recycle nutrients throughout the ecosystem. Every fallen mangrove leaf eventually becomes part of this continuous cycle, broken down into simpler materials that nourish new generations of microscopic life. Nothing is wasted. Every stage of growth eventually supports another, creating a remarkably efficient natural system that has operated quietly for centuries. The bay's sheltered waters also provide an important home for many other marine animals. Juvenile fish shelter among the mangrove roots during the earlier stages of their lives, before venturing into nearby coral reefs and open coastal waters. Blue crabs search slowly across the bottom, while shrimp, sea stars, snails, and numerous species of small invertebrates quietly share the same environment. Above them, pelicans patrol the shoreline, frigate birds soar high overhead on warm air currents, and herons patiently watch the shallows for their next opportunity to feed. Every creature contributes to the larger ecological story unfolding within this peaceful tropical bay. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Mosquito Bay is that all of these relationships remain largely invisible to casual visitors. Most people arrive hoping to see glowing water, understandably captivated by the brilliant blue trails that appear after sunset. Yet the true wonder extends far beyond the light itself. The glowing display is simply the most visible expression of an ecosystem functioning exactly as nature intended. Healthy mangrove forests, stable shorelines, warm tropical temperatures, protected waters, balanced nutrient cycles, and thriving microscopic life all combine to create a phenomenon that seems almost magical, while remaining firmly rooted in biology and ecology. Standing quietly beneath the Caribbean stars, it becomes easier to appreciate that every glowing ripple tells a much larger story. The blue light lasts only a moment before fading back into darkness, but the ecological relationships responsible for that brief flash have been unfolding continuously for thousands of years. It is that quiet persistence, more than the light itself, that makes Mosquito Bay one of the most extraordinary natural places on Earth. Although the glowing waters of Mosquito Bay appear timeless, they are also surprisingly sensitive to change. Tiny shifts in water chemistry, changes to the surrounding shoreline, unusually intense storms, or prolonged drought can all influence the microscopic community responsible for the glowing display. For this reason, scientists view Mosquito Bay not simply as a beautiful tourist destination, but as a living laboratory where every season provides new opportunities to understand how delicate ecosystems respond to the constantly changing world around them. One of the greatest natural forces shaping the Caribbean is the annual hurricane season. Between early summer and late autumn, warm ocean waters provide the energy needed for powerful tropical storms to develop. Many weaken before reaching land, while others grow into hurricanes capable of reshaping coastlines within only a few hours. Strong winds bend mangrove trees, heavy rainfall pours into sheltered bays, and waves stir sediments that may have rested undisturbed on the bottom for years. Such storms can temporarily reduce the brightness of Mosquito Bay by altering salinity, clouding the water with suspended particles, or washing additional organic material into the ecosystem. Yet despite these dramatic disturbances, the bay has demonstrated remarkable resilience over time. Following a major storm, nature begins restoring its balance almost immediately. Fine sediments gradually settle back to the bottom, allowing the water to become clear once more. Mangrove trees, adapted through countless generations to withstand tropical weather, often recover by producing fresh leaves and new growth. The microscopic dinoflagellates slowly rebuild their populations as environmental conditions stabilize, and within months, the familiar blue glow frequently begins returning. Scientists carefully document these recovery periods because they provide valuable insight into how healthy coastal ecosystems respond to natural disturbances. Rather than viewing hurricanes only as destructive events, researchers recognize that they have long been part of the natural rhythm shaping Caribbean environments. Rainfall also influences the bay in quieter ways throughout the year. During wetter months, fresh water flows through the mangrove forests before gradually mixing with the salt water of the bay. This changes the salinity slightly, affecting the conditions experienced by countless microscopic organisms. During extended dry periods, evaporation may increase the salt concentration instead. The dinoflagellates responsible for the glowing display have adapted remarkably well to these seasonal fluctuations, yet scientists know there are limits beyond which even healthy populations begin to struggle. Understanding these natural cycles helps researchers distinguish ordinary seasonal changes from longer-term environmental trends. Water temperature is another factor that receives careful attention. Tropical waters remain relatively warm throughout the year, creating ideal conditions for Pyrodinium bahamense to grow and reproduce. Even so, slight variations influence how rapidly populations expand or decline. Researchers regularly measure temperatures throughout different parts of the bay, comparing them with observations collected over many years. These long-term records help reveal patterns that would remain invisible during shorter studies. Nature often changes gradually, and understanding those changes requires patience, measured not in days or weeks, but in decades. Scientists are equally interested in the nutrients circulating through the ecosystem. Every living organism depends upon a steady supply of essential elements, such as nitrogen and phosphorus, yet too much of these nutrients can be just as problematic as too little. The mangrove forests naturally contribute organic material that supports the microscopic food web, while tides gently circulate dissolved nutrients throughout the bay. Researchers monitor these delicate balances because they influence not only the dinoflagellates, but also the countless bacteria, algae, plankton, fish, and invertebrates sharing the same waters. A healthy ecosystem depends upon moderation rather than abundance, with every part remaining carefully connected to the others. Around the world, marine biologists have come to appreciate that ecosystems like Mosquito Bay are among the best places for studying ecological relationships on a manageable scale. Although the bay itself covers only a relatively small area, it contains nearly every ingredient required to understand how coastal ecosystems function. There are producers harvesting sunlight, decomposers recycling nutrients, predators and prey interacting throughout the food web, sheltered nursery habitats supporting juvenile fish, and microscopic communities responding continuously to changing environmental conditions. Every glowing night reflects not only the success of the dinoflagellates, but the health of the entire ecosystem, working quietly beneath the surface. This growing understanding has encouraged increasingly careful conservation efforts. Local organizations, scientists, government agencies, and tour operators all recognize that preserving Mosquito Bay requires protecting much more than its famous nighttime glow. Healthy mangrove forests, clean water, responsible tourism, and continued scientific monitoring all contribute to safeguarding the remarkable balance that nature has established here. Visitors themselves become part of this effort simply by respecting the quiet atmosphere of the bay, following established guidelines, and appreciating that they are guests within a living ecosystem rather than spectators visiting an ordinary attraction. There is something reassuring about knowing that such careful stewardship continues alongside the natural rhythms of the Caribbean. Each evening, as darkness settles once again across Vieques, millions of microscopic dinoflagellates drift patiently through the warm water, just as they have for countless generations. They know nothing of scientific studies, conservation plans, or world records. As visitors paddle quietly through Mosquito Bay, one of the first things many notice is how different the experience feels from visiting most other natural attractions. Instead, the experience encourages patience. The gentle splash of a paddle, the soft rustle of mangrove leaves stirred by the trade winds, and the distant calls of night birds gradually replace the noise of everyday life. In that peaceful silence, even the smallest movement through the water becomes meaningful, because every ripple has the potential to awaken another brilliant flash of blue light. Kayaks have become the preferred way to explore the bay for several important reasons. Many tour operators now use transparent kayaks, allowing visitors to look directly beneath them as fish swim silently through the glowing water below. A single turn of the paddle may send luminous spirals drifting beneath the clear hull, while tiny shrimp scatter in every direction, leaving sparkling trails that seem to vanish into the darkness almost as quickly as they appear. The effect often feels less like traveling across water and more like floating through the night sky itself. Moonlight plays an important role in shaping the experience. Although a bright full moon creates beautiful reflections across the Caribbean, its light also competes with the faint glow produced by the dinoflagellates. For this reason, many experienced guides recommend visiting during the days surrounding a new moon, when the sky becomes much darker and the blue flashes appear at their brightest. Without strong moonlight washing over the bay, the human eye gradually becomes more sensitive to faint light. After only 15 or 20 minutes in near complete darkness, details that were once invisible begin to emerge. Clouds can create surprisingly beautiful conditions as well. At first, it might seem that a perfectly clear night would always provide the best view, yet thin clouds sometimes block distant sources of light, while leaving the bay itself wrapped in deeper darkness. Under these conditions, the contrast between the glowing water and the surrounding landscape becomes even more dramatic. The mangrove forests fade into dark silhouettes. The horizon almost disappears, and every movement through the water stands out with remarkable clarity. It is another reminder that the beauty of Mosquito Bay depends not upon a single factor, but upon the delicate combination of countless natural conditions working together. Even the stars contribute to the atmosphere in unexpected ways. On exceptionally clear evenings, the Milky Way stretches across the heavens like a pale ribbon of mist, while familiar constellations slowly rotate overhead as the Earth continues its silent journey through space. The comparison has inspired countless visitors over the years. Above lies the light of stars so distant that many began their journey long before human civilization existed. Below shines the light of countless tiny cells, each one alive in that very moment, responding to the slightest touch of the surrounding water. Many people are surprised by how emotional the experience becomes. In fact, the opposite often happens. Knowing that every blue flash represents a living organism carrying out an ancient chemical reaction makes the display even more remarkable. Rather than imagining something magical, visitors begin appreciating the astonishing complexity hidden within nature itself. Millions of microscopic cells, each following simple biological instructions, together create a spectacle that has inspired wonder for generations. Photographing the bay presents its own unique challenges. Cameras do not see the world in quite the same way as human eyes. Capturing the delicate glow requires long exposures, steady equipment, and careful adjustments to camera settings. Even then, photographs often struggle to reproduce the true experience of sitting quietly in a kayak while glowing trails surround every movement. The human eye constantly adapts to changing light, while the sounds, warm air, gentle breeze, and peaceful atmosphere all become part of the memory in ways no photograph can fully preserve. Many visitors eventually lower their cameras altogether, choosing simply to experience the moment rather than trying to capture it. Perhaps that is one of the greatest gifts Mosquito Bay offers. The bay asks nothing except patience and quiet observation. There is no need to hurry, because the light has been appearing here night after night for countless generations. Long after the kayaks return to shore and visitors make their way home, the dinoflagellates will continue drifting through the warm Caribbean water, responding to fish, shrimp, gentle waves, and falling raindrops, just as they always have. Hidden within the peaceful darkness, millions of tiny living lights will continue transforming an ordinary tropical bay into one of the most beautiful natural spectacles on Earth, quietly reminding everyone fortunate enough to witness it that some of nature's greatest wonders reveal themselves only when we are willing to slow down and simply watch. Beyond its beauty, Mosquito Bay has also become an important classroom beneath the stars. They are also witnessing a living lesson in ecology, chemistry, biology, and conservation, all unfolding at the same time. Unlike a museum exhibit or a photograph in a textbook, the bay demonstrates these scientific principles exactly where they belong, within the natural environment that shaped them over thousands of years. The glowing water serves as the most visible attraction, but behind every shimmering trail lies an intricate story connecting microscopic life to an entire tropical ecosystem. Many of the guides leading nighttime tours have spent years learning not only the history of the bay, but also the science that keeps it alive. As the kayaks drift slowly through the darkness, they often explain how each glowing flash begins inside a single microscopic cell, how mangrove forests nourish the water with organic material, and why calm conditions are so important for maintaining the extraordinary concentration of dinoflagellates. Visitors quickly discover that the bay is far more than a beautiful destination. The more people learn about the ecosystem, the more remarkable the glowing display becomes. Students and researchers travel to Vieques for similar reasons. Universities throughout Puerto Rico and beyond have used Mosquito Bay as an outdoor laboratory where future marine biologists gain experience studying coastal ecosystems, collecting water samples, measuring salinity, identifying microscopic organisms, and monitoring environmental conditions all help students understand how scientific research is carried out beyond the classroom. The bay offers a rare opportunity to observe living processes that are both scientifically important and visually unforgettable. Many young researchers experience their first close encounter with marine biology while standing beside these glowing waters, an experience that often inspires lifelong careers devoted to understanding and protecting the oceans. Modern technology has expanded what scientists can learn from the bay. Water quality sensors continuously measure changes in temperature, dissolved oxygen, and salinity with remarkable precision. Sophisticated microscopes reveal the internal structures of individual dinoflagellates in extraordinary detail, while genetic sequencing helps researchers compare populations from different parts of the Caribbean. Satellites orbiting hundreds of miles above the Earth monitor weather patterns, rainfall, and ocean temperatures that may influence the health of coastal ecosystems below. Information gathered from these different tools gradually forms a more complete picture of how Mosquito Bay functions, allowing scientists to understand both the immediate conditions within the bay and the larger environmental forces shaping it over time. The bay also reminds researchers that ecosystems rarely exist in isolation. What happens on the surrounding land eventually influences the water, just as conditions in the sea affect the coastline in return. Healthy mangrove forests protect the shoreline from erosion while filtering runoff before it reaches the bay. Coral reefs located farther offshore help reduce the strength of incoming waves, creating calmer conditions within the protected inlet. Seagrass meadows trap sediments and provide habitat for young fish that later move between different parts of the coastal environment. Every habitat supports the others, creating an interconnected system where the health of one area contributes directly to the health of the next. This idea of interconnectedness extends far beyond Mosquito Bay itself. Throughout the world's oceans, microscopic organisms perform essential tasks that make life possible for countless larger species. Phytoplankton drifting through sunlit waters produce an astonishing portion of the oxygen present in Earth's atmosphere, while forming the foundation of nearly every marine food web. Tiny zooplankton feed upon them, followed by small fish, larger fish, seabirds, sea turtles, dolphins, and whales. The largest animal ever to live, the blue whale, ultimately depends upon organisms so small they are almost invisible. Mosquito Bay offers a gentle reminder of this extraordinary truth. The smallest forms of life often have the greatest influence upon the larger world around them. For many visitors, this realization becomes one of the most lasting memories of the experience. Before arriving, they expected glowing water. By the time they leave, they have gained a new appreciation for the hidden complexity of the natural world. They understand that every brilliant blue trail is the visible result of millions of microscopic organisms responding together, supported by healthy mangrove forests, warm tropical waters, balanced nutrient cycles, and countless ecological relationships stretching far beyond what can be seen from a kayak. The glow becomes more than a beautiful sight. It becomes a symbol of how countless small processes combine to create something extraordinary. As another peaceful Caribbean night settles over Vieques, the bay continues following the same quiet rhythm it has known for generations. The mangroves stand watch along the shoreline, their roots disappearing into the calm water below. Tiny fish move silently among the shadows, while gentle trade winds stir the leaves overhead. Beneath the surface, millions of dinoflagellates drift patiently through the darkness, each carrying within a single microscopic cell the remarkable ability to transform movement into light. Together they create a spectacle unlike almost anywhere else on Earth, not through noise or grandeur, but through quiet cooperation. It is a fitting reminder that some of the greatest wonders in nature are not built by the largest creatures or the most powerful forces, but by countless tiny lives working together in perfect harmony beneath the still waters of a tropical night. The quiet beauty of Mosquito Bay also encourages us to think about time in a different way. Most visitors experience the glowing water for only an hour or two before returning to shore, carrying with them memories that often last a lifetime. Yet for the microscopic organisms drifting beneath the surface, that single evening represents only one brief moment in a cycle that has repeated itself for countless generations. Long before the first people settled on Vieques, before European ships crossed the Atlantic, before modern science gave names to dinoflagellates or explained the chemistry of bioluminescence, these tiny organisms were already responding to the movement of fish and waves with brief flashes of blue light. It is fascinating to imagine how many different creatures have witnessed these glowing waters throughout history. Sea turtles have likely passed through the bay for thousands of years, leaving luminous trails behind them as they searched for food beneath moonless skies. Schools of fish have stirred brilliant clouds of light while fleeing larger predators. Wading birds hunting along the shoreline have watched glowing ripples spread across the shallows with every movement of their prey. Even the occasional tropical rainstorm creates its own unique display, as thousands of raindrops strike the calm surface almost simultaneously, each impact producing countless tiny flashes before darkness quietly returns. The bay is never truly still. Even in the absence of people, life continues creating delicate patterns of light throughout every night of the year. This endless rhythm reflects one of nature's most remarkable qualities. Living systems are constantly in motion, even when they appear perfectly calm. Beneath the surface of Mosquito Bay, individual dinoflagellates are growing, dividing, and reproducing. Tiny crustaceans feed upon microscopic algae. Bacteria recycle nutrients released from fallen mangrove leaves. Juvenile fish weave carefully among submerged roots, while larger predators patrol the deeper water beyond. Every organism follows its own quiet routine, yet together they create a stable ecosystem capable of supporting one of the brightest displays of bioluminescence anywhere on Earth. What appears from above to be a peaceful tropical bay is, in reality, an endlessly active community where millions of living interactions unfold every second. Perhaps that is why Mosquito Bay has become so valuable to scientists. It demonstrates that extraordinary natural phenomena rarely result from one remarkable organism acting alone. Instead, they emerge through cooperation among countless different forms of life, each performing its own small role within a larger ecological system. The dinoflagellates cannot create their spectacular display without healthy mangrove forests. The mangroves depend upon the surrounding coastline and tropical climate. Fish, shrimp, crabs, birds, microorganisms, tides, rainfall, and ocean currents all contribute in subtle ways to maintaining the conditions that allow the bay to flourish. Every glowing paddle stroke therefore reveals not simply microscopic organisms producing light, but an entire ecosystem functioning in remarkable harmony. The more researchers study places like Mosquito Bay, the more they appreciate how much remains to be discovered. Marine biology continues revealing new species, unexpected ecological relationships, and remarkable adaptations hidden within organisms that most people never notice. Even familiar coastal environments still hold mysteries waiting to be explored. Advances in underwater imaging, genetics, and environmental monitoring allow scientists to observe details that would have been impossible to detect only a few decades ago. Yet every new discovery also reminds researchers how much remains unknown. Nature has always proven more creative and more intricate than human imagination first expects. The experience invites both wonder and reflection. The light itself lasts only a moment, appearing and fading with each gentle movement through the water. Yet the biological story behind that brief flash stretches back through millions of years of evolution. Every glowing trail connects us to ancient oceans, where microscopic organisms first developed the remarkable chemistry of bioluminescence, to tropical mangrove forests patiently growing along sheltered coastlines, and to countless generations of people who paused beside these same waters and marveled at the beauty unfolding before them. As another peaceful night settles over Vieques, the last kayaks eventually return to shore, their glowing wakes slowly dissolving into darkness behind them. Overhead, the stars continue their slow passage across the Caribbean sky, while below, millions of microscopic dinoflagellates drift patiently with the gentle currents, ready to illuminate the next passing turtle, the next falling raindrop, or the next quiet paddle that disturbs the water. Long after the shoreline has fallen silent, the hidden world of Mosquito Bay continues exactly as it always has, quietly transforming the darkness into living light, one tiny flash at a time. Beyond the beauty visible to visitors, Mosquito Bay also serves as a reminder that the smallest forms of life often have the greatest influence on the planet. The glowing dinoflagellates drifting through the bay belong to an enormous community of marine microorganisms that help sustain life throughout the world's oceans. Although individually invisible, together they form one of the most important foundations of Earth's living systems. The ocean contains an astonishing amount of microscopic life. A single teaspoon of seawater may hold millions of bacteria, thousands of microscopic algae, tiny drifting animals, and countless other organisms too small to see without magnification. Each occupies its own place within an intricate web of life. Some harvest sunlight through photosynthesis. Others feed upon bacteria or organic material suspended in the water. Still others become food for slightly larger organisms, continuing a chain of energy that eventually supports fish, seabirds, sea turtles, dolphins, seals, and the largest whales ever to swim through the oceans. Every meal taken by a giant predator can ultimately be traced back to organisms no larger than a grain of dust. Dinoflagellates occupy an especially interesting position within this invisible community. Many species spend their days converting sunlight into energy, becoming tiny floating producers that help sustain countless marine food webs. Others consume even smaller organisms while continuing to drift with the currents. Some species alternate between both strategies, depending upon environmental conditions, allowing them to survive in changing oceans where food and sunlight are not always equally available. This remarkable flexibility has helped dinoflagellates persist through immense spans of geological time, adapting to changing climates, shifting continents, and evolving marine ecosystems for hundreds of millions of years. Scientists often refer to these drifting microscopic organisms collectively as plankton, a word derived from the Greek term meaning wanderer or drifter. Unlike fish, dolphins, or sea turtles that actively swim toward chosen destinations, plankton spend much of their lives traveling wherever currents carry them. Some possess limited ability to move up or down through the water using tiny flagella or other structures, but none can overcome the enormous movement of the sea itself. Ocean currents therefore become invisible highways, transporting microscopic life across astonishing distances, connecting coastal ecosystems separated by hundreds or even thousands of miles. These great currents are among the most powerful forces shaping life within the oceans. Warm water flowing northward from tropical regions gradually mixes with cooler currents descending from higher latitudes. Nutrients carried upward from deeper water nourish microscopic algae near the surface, while winds push vast masses of seawater across entire ocean basins. Without these constantly moving currents, marine ecosystems would look entirely different. They distribute heat, transport oxygen, recycle nutrients, and carry microscopic organisms to new habitats where future generations may continue their quiet existence. For the dinoflagellates of Mosquito Bay, however, remaining in one place is just as important as traveling. The sheltered geography of the bay protects them from being swept into the open Caribbean, where their remarkable concentrations would quickly disperse. Here, within the calm water surrounded by mangrove forests, they are able to reproduce successfully while remaining close together in extraordinary numbers. It is a delicate balance between movement and stability. Enough water circulates to keep the ecosystem healthy, yet not enough to scatter the millions of organisms responsible for the glowing display. Nature has quietly achieved precisely the conditions these microscopic drifters require. The longer scientists study plankton, the more they appreciate how much influence these tiny organisms have upon the entire planet. Marine phytoplankton are responsible for producing an extraordinary proportion of the oxygen present in Earth's atmosphere. Every second breath taken by people may owe something to microscopic organisms floating quietly through the oceans. At the same time, these organisms absorb enormous quantities of carbon dioxide, helping regulate the Earth's climate over long periods of time. Though invisible to nearly everyone, they perform services upon which countless larger forms of life ultimately depend. Mosquito Bay offers a rare opportunity to witness this hidden world in a way few other places allow. Most microscopic organisms remain forever beyond the limits of ordinary human sight. Here, however, their presence announces itself through countless flashes of brilliant blue light, whenever the water is disturbed. The glow acts almost like a signature, revealing an invisible community that exists not only within this quiet Caribbean bay, but throughout oceans around the world. As darkness deepens once again over Vieques, the glowing water quietly continues its ancient performance. Fish weave through the bay, leaving luminous trails behind them. Gentle waves awaken tiny flashes along the shoreline, and millions of microscopic dinoflagellates drift patiently with the slow movement of the currents. They neither know nor care that scientists study them, photographers admire them, or visitors travel from distant countries, hoping to witness their remarkable light. They simply continue the same quiet rhythm they have followed for millions of years, reminding us that some of the most important stories in nature are written not by the largest creatures or the loudest voices, but by the smallest lives, patiently drifting beneath the surface of the sea. One of the most remarkable qualities of Mosquito Bay is that it reminds us how much of the natural world still exists beyond the limits of ordinary human perception. We often judge the world by what we can immediately see, hear, or touch. Yet nature is constantly operating on scales far smaller and far larger than our senses can fully appreciate. Beneath every calm stretch of ocean lies an invisible community of microscopic life, carrying out countless chemical reactions every second. High above the atmosphere, distant galaxies continue moving through space, their light taking millions of years to reach Earth. Between those extremes exists an endless range of hidden processes, quietly shaping the planet. The glowing waters of Mosquito Bay briefly allow us to glimpse one of those normally invisible worlds, transforming microscopic biology into something visible enough for anyone to appreciate. Scientists frequently describe discoveries like this as moments when nature pulls back the curtain just enough to reveal what has always been there. The dinoflagellates do not suddenly appear when darkness falls. They have been drifting through the bay throughout the entire day, harvesting sunlight, growing, reproducing, and interacting with countless other organisms. This idea extends far beyond Mosquito Bay itself. Coral reefs, for example, often appear to be colorful underwater rock formations, yet they are actually vast living cities built by countless tiny coral polyps working together over hundreds and sometimes thousands of years. A single coral polyp is only a few millimeters across, soft-bodied and delicate, yet entire reef systems visible from space are created through the patient efforts of billions of these tiny animals. Like the dinoflagellates of Mosquito Bay, each individual contributes only a small part, but together they create something magnificent that no single organism could ever achieve alone. The same pattern appears throughout the oceans. Great schools of fish move with astonishing coordination, despite each individual responding only to the movements of its nearest neighbors. Giant kelp forests begin with tiny spores drifting through the water before growing into underwater forests reaching toward the sunlight. Even enormous blue whales, the largest animals ever known to exist, ultimately depend upon tiny shrimp like krill that themselves rely upon microscopic plankton. Again and again, nature demonstrates that extraordinary complexity often emerges from countless simple interactions repeated over immense periods of time. Researchers studying complex systems have become increasingly fascinated by this principle. Whether examining forests, coral reefs, weather patterns, or entire ecosystems, they often find that no single part controls everything. Instead, Balance emerges through the combined actions of countless smaller pieces responding to one another. Mosquito Bay provides a beautiful illustration of this idea. No single dinoflagellate creates the glowing bay. No single mangrove tree maintains the ecosystem. No individual fish or crab determines its future. Rather, millions of organisms, physical processes, tides, temperatures, nutrients, and chemical reactions quietly work together, producing a natural wonder that appears almost effortless despite its extraordinary complexity. There is also something deeply reassuring about the patience of these natural systems. Human lives often unfold at a rapid pace, measured by calendars, schedules, and the passing of individual days. The bay follows a different rhythm entirely. Mangrove trees grow slowly over decades. Shorelines change gradually through countless tides. Microscopic populations rise and fall with the changing seasons. Evolution itself shaped the remarkable chemistry of bioluminescence over millions of years, through countless generations of tiny organisms adapting to life in the sea. Standing beside the glowing water encourages a rare sense of perspective, reminding us that many of nature's greatest achievements are built through patience rather than speed. Even after visitors return home, the story of Mosquito Bay quietly continues. The kayaks are lifted from the water, the stars gradually fade with the coming dawn, and another tropical day begins across the island of Vieques. Beneath the surface, however, the microscopic world remains just as active as ever. Dinoflagellates drift through the warm water, gathering energy from the sun. Tiny crustaceans feed among invisible currents. Mangrove roots shelter young fish, while fallen leaves slowly release nutrients into the ecosystem. Every part continues performing its role without interruption, preparing the bay for another evening, when darkness will once again reveal the hidden brilliance waiting beneath the surface. Perhaps that is why Mosquito Bay leaves such a lasting impression on so many people. Even in an age of satellites, powerful computers, and advanced scientific instruments, there remain places where a simple paddle stroke across quiet water can awaken genuine wonder. Not because the phenomenon is unexplained, but because understanding it only deepens our appreciation. Millions of microscopic living cells, each carrying out an elegant chemical reaction perfected through evolution, combine to create a spectacle that feels almost dreamlike beneath the Caribbean stars. Although Mosquito Bay may be the brightest bioluminescent bay in the world, its story ultimately reaches far beyond the shores of Vieques. It reminds us that the oceans remain one of the least explored parts of our planet. More than 70% of Earth's surface is covered by water, yet scientists estimate that a large portion of the deep ocean has never been directly observed by human eyes. New species are discovered every year. Unexpected ecosystems continue emerging from beneath the waves, and familiar organisms regularly surprise researchers with abilities that were previously unknown. The glowing waters of Mosquito Bay stand as one small but beautiful reminder that the sea still holds countless mysteries waiting to be understood. Marine exploration has advanced enormously over the past century. Early naturalists relied upon simple nets, glass jars, and hand-drawn illustrations to record what they observed. Today, remotely operated vehicles descend thousands of meters into the deepest parts of the ocean, carrying high-definition cameras and delicate scientific instruments. Autonomous underwater vehicles quietly map the seafloor for weeks at a time, while satellites orbiting high above the Earth monitor sea surface temperatures, ocean currents, and plankton blooms across entire oceans. Every new tool expands humanity's understanding of the marine world, yet each discovery also reveals how much remains unknown. One reason the oceans continue surprising scientists is that life beneath the surface has evolved under conditions very different from those found on land. Pressure increases rapidly with depth, sunlight disappears within only a few hundred meters, and temperatures can range from the warmth of tropical lagoons to waters hovering just above freezing. Organisms have responded to these challenges with astonishing creativity. Some generate their own light, others survive near underwater volcanic vents where no sunlight reaches at all, while certain microbes obtain energy from chemicals rising through cracks in the Earth's crust, rather than from photosynthesis. Every expedition reminds researchers that evolution has explored possibilities far beyond those most people ever imagine. The glowing dinoflagellates of Mosquito Bay belong to this larger tradition of biological innovation. Although they inhabit shallow tropical waters rather than the deep sea, they demonstrate the same remarkable principle. Given enough time, evolution often discovers elegant solutions to the challenges of survival. In their case, a tiny chemical reaction produces brilliant blue light that may help reduce the threat posed by predators. It is a simple adaptation when viewed one organism at a time, yet when millions respond together, the result becomes one of the most spectacular natural displays anywhere on Earth. The study of bioluminescence has also encouraged scientists from many different disciplines to work together. Marine biologists investigate the organisms themselves, while chemists examine the remarkable reactions producing light. Physicists study how different wavelengths travel through seawater, and engineers look to nature for inspiration when designing highly efficient lighting systems and sensitive imaging equipment. Medical researchers continue exploring glowing proteins first discovered in marine organisms, using them to observe living cells in ways that were once unimaginable. A quiet Caribbean bay therefore connects not only to marine ecology, but also to advances in medicine, chemistry, engineering, and biotechnology around the world. Perhaps the greatest lesson offered by Mosquito Bay is that curiosity often begins with simple observation. Someone notices an unusual glow in the water and asks why it happens. That single question leads to careful investigation, microscopic examination, chemical analysis, ecological research, and eventually a much deeper understanding of the natural world. Science rarely begins with certainty. More often it begins with wonder. The glowing waters inspire questions, and those questions gradually reveal the remarkable complexity hidden beneath what first appeared to be an ordinary tropical bay. Even now, researchers continue asking new questions about the bay and the organisms living within it. How will changing ocean conditions influence future populations of dinoflagellates? What additional biological processes remain undiscovered inside these microscopic cells? Are there other coastal ecosystems around the world quietly waiting to reveal equally remarkable adaptations? Every generation of scientists inherits new technologies and fresh perspectives, allowing them to revisit familiar places while uncovering details that previous generations could never have observed. The story of Mosquito Bay is therefore still being written, one careful observation at a time. As another evening settles over Vieques, the familiar rhythm quietly begins once more. The tropical sky fades from brilliant blue to deep indigo, stars gradually emerge overhead, and the mangrove forest becomes a dark silhouette surrounding the peaceful bay. Beneath the surface, millions of microscopic dinoflagellates drift silently through the warm Caribbean water, waiting for the slightest disturbance. A fish changes direction, a shrimp darts across the shallows, or a gentle wave reaches the shoreline, and for the briefest instant, another brilliant flash of blue appears, before fading once again into darkness. It is a performance that has continued night after night for thousands of years, requiring no audience, no applause, and no recognition. The bay simply follows its timeless rhythm, quietly reminding us that some of the greatest wonders on Earth are created not through size or spectacle, but through countless tiny lives working together beneath the calm surface of the sea. One of the reasons Mosquito Bay has become so well known throughout the world is that scientists have attempted to answer a question that seems surprisingly simple. How bright is bright? Admiring the glowing water is one thing, but comparing one bioluminescent bay with another requires careful measurement rather than personal opinion. Human eyes are wonderfully sensitive, yet they are also influenced by moonlight, weather, cloud cover, and even how long someone has been standing in the darkness. To understand why Mosquito Bay consistently stands above other glowing bays, researchers needed objective ways to measure what visitors could only describe with words like spectacular, brilliant, or unforgettable. Marine biologists began by measuring the concentration of dinoflagellates within the water itself. Using carefully collected samples, they counted the number of microscopic organisms contained within known volumes of seawater. These measurements revealed something extraordinary. While many coastal environments contain bioluminescent dinoflagellates, Mosquito Bay frequently supports populations numbering in the millions within only a single gallon of water. Such extraordinary concentrations mean that every gentle disturbance activates enormous numbers of organisms simultaneously. Instead of seeing scattered points of light, visitors witness broad ribbons and swirling clouds of blue that appear almost continuous across the surface. Researchers also examine the intensity of the light produced during controlled laboratory experiments. Water samples collected from the bay can be gently stirred beneath carefully monitored conditions, while sensitive instruments record the amount of light being emitted. Unlike the human eye, these instruments are unaffected by expectation or emotion. They simply measure light with remarkable precision, allowing scientists to compare one location with another using the same methods every time. Over many years of observation, these measurements consistently demonstrated that Mosquito Bay produces exceptionally bright displays when compared with other well-known bioluminescent locations. This careful scientific work eventually contributed to Mosquito Bay receiving recognition from Guinness World Records as the brightest documented bioluminescent bay on Earth. The title reflects far more than beautiful photographs or enthusiastic travel stories. It represents decades of careful observation, repeated sampling, and detailed scientific analysis, confirming what local residents had appreciated for generations. The glowing waters of this quiet Caribbean inlet truly stand among the brightest natural displays of living light ever measured. Even so, scientists are careful to point out that brightness is never completely fixed. The bay changes continuously throughout the year. Seasonal rainfall, water temperature, nutrient availability, tides, and the natural life cycle of the dinoflagellates all influence the intensity of the glow from one month to the next. A visitor arriving after several weeks of ideal environmental conditions may witness an exceptionally brilliant display, while someone visiting after a powerful tropical storm might observe a softer glow as the ecosystem gradually returns to balance. The Guinness recognition therefore reflects the remarkable potential of the bay under favorable conditions, rather than suggesting that every evening will appear exactly the same. This natural variation is actually one of the qualities scientists find most fascinating. Healthy ecosystems are never static. They breathe, adjust, recover, and respond continuously to changing environmental conditions. The glowing waters therefore become another valuable indicator of the bay's overall health. By monitoring the brightness over many years, alongside measurements of water chemistry, temperature, rainfall, and dinoflagellate populations, researchers can better understand how the ecosystem responds to both natural fluctuations and long-term environmental changes. Each season contributes another small piece to a scientific record that continues growing year after year. Visitors often ask whether the brightness can be predicted before arriving. Guides usually explain that while experience provides useful expectations, nature always has the final say. Clear, moonless nights generally produce the most dramatic viewing conditions because the human eye adjusts fully to the darkness. Calm water allows glowing trails to remain beautifully defined, while healthy dinoflagellate populations provide abundant flashes with every movement. Yet there is always an element of unpredictability that adds to the experience. No two evenings are ever completely alike. The same bay offers a slightly different performance each night, shaped by weather, tides, wildlife, and countless invisible biological processes unfolding beneath the surface. Photographers have learned this lesson well. Many return repeatedly over several nights rather than expecting perfect conditions during a single visit. They patiently wait for dark skies, calm water, and ideal weather before setting up their cameras along the shoreline or from specially guided kayaks. Capturing the glow requires unusually long exposure times because the light produced by each microscopic organism is both delicate and fleeting. Modern digital cameras have made such photography much easier than it once was, yet even the finest equipment struggles to reproduce what the human eye experiences in person. A photograph can preserve the blue trails across the water, but it cannot fully capture the warm tropical air, the gentle sounds of the mangrove forest, the silence between paddle strokes, or the quiet feeling of floating beneath a sky crowded with stars. Perhaps that is why so many people describe visiting Mosquito Bay as something that cannot be fully explained through pictures alone. The glowing water is certainly unforgettable, but the experience is shaped just as much by everything surrounding it. The calm rhythm of the paddles, the scent of salt carried on the evening breeze, the silhouettes of the mangrove trees, and the knowledge that millions of microscopic organisms are quietly creating every flash, all become part of a single memory. It is one of those rare places where careful measurement and genuine amazement exist comfortably side by side, each deepening our appreciation for the other. Although the science behind Mosquito Bay has answered many of the questions that once surrounded its glowing waters, researchers continue discovering new details every year. The bay is not simply a beautiful destination frozen in time. It is a living ecosystem that changes subtly from season to season, responding to weather, tides, rainfall, and countless biological interactions taking place beneath the surface. Every visit by marine scientists adds another piece to a much larger puzzle, helping them understand not only why the bay glows so brilliantly today, but also how it may continue changing in the years ahead. One area of ongoing research focuses on the daily life of the dinoflagellates themselves. Although their ability to produce light is well understood, Scientists are still learning about the subtle ways these microscopic organisms respond to changing environmental conditions. Even slight differences in water temperature or nutrient availability can influence how rapidly populations grow. Researchers regularly collect samples throughout different parts of the bay, comparing one location with another to understand where the greatest concentrations develop and why. By repeating these measurements month after month and year after year, they build an increasingly detailed picture of the invisible community responsible for the glowing display. Modern genetic techniques have opened entirely new possibilities for understanding these remarkable organisms. Rather than studying only what can be seen through a microscope, scientists can now examine the genetic instructions contained within each individual cell. These studies reveal how different genes become active under changing environmental conditions, helping researchers understand how the dinoflagellates regulate everything from photosynthesis during the day to bioluminescence after sunset. The more researchers learn, the more they appreciate that even a single microscopic cell contains astonishing biological complexity. Researchers are also interested in the relationships between the dinoflagellates and the countless other microorganisms sharing the same water. Mosquito Bay is not inhabited by one species alone. Every drop contains bacteria, microscopic algae, tiny drifting animals, and countless other forms of life interacting in ways that scientists are only beginning to understand. Some organisms compete for nutrients, while others recycle organic material released by decaying plants or animals. Together, they form an intricate microscopic community where every species influences the others, often in ways that remain hidden without careful scientific investigation. Advances in underwater technology have also transformed the way researchers study environments like Mosquito Bay. Small underwater sensors can now remain in place for weeks or even months, quietly recording changes in temperature, oxygen levels, salinity, and water movement throughout the day and night. Rather than relying on occasional measurements collected during research expeditions, scientists can observe the ecosystem continuously, creating detailed records that reveal subtle patterns impossible to detect in shorter studies. These long-term observations are especially valuable because healthy ecosystems often change gradually, with important trends becoming visible only after many years of careful monitoring. Satellite observations provide another remarkable perspective. From hundreds of miles above the Earth, instruments can monitor ocean temperatures, rainfall, cloud cover, and even the concentration of microscopic algae across enormous stretches of the Caribbean Sea. While satellites cannot directly observe the glowing dinoflagellates hidden within Mosquito Bay, they help scientists understand the larger environmental conditions influencing the region. Combining information gathered from space with measurements collected on the water allows researchers to build a much more complete understanding of how local ecosystems respond to broader changes occurring throughout the Caribbean. One particularly fascinating area of study involves comparing Mosquito Bay with other bioluminescent locations around the world. Scientists examine whether similar species dominate different glowing bays, how nutrient cycles vary from one ecosystem to another, and why certain locations consistently produce brighter displays than others. These comparisons reveal that while the chemistry of bioluminescence remains remarkably similar, each bay possesses its own ecological personality shaped by local geography, climate, and biological communities. Mosquito Bay stands out not because it follows different biological rules, but because so many favorable conditions have come together in one extraordinary place. Researchers also recognize that every answer tends to produce new questions. Could other microscopic organisms contribute in subtle ways to the health of the ecosystem? Are there additional environmental factors influencing the brightness of the glow that have not yet been fully identified? How might long-term climate patterns affect tropical bioluminescent bays over the coming decades? Science rarely reaches a final destination. Instead, it moves steadily forward through curiosity, observation, and the willingness to continue asking thoughtful questions about the natural world. Perhaps that ongoing sense of discovery is one of the most inspiring aspects of Mosquito Bay. Visitors arrive hoping to witness glowing water, while scientists arrive hoping to understand it more deeply. Both leave with a greater appreciation for the remarkable complexity hidden beneath the calm surface. The bay reminds us that even places studied for decades continue revealing new details to those willing to observe carefully. Beneath the quiet Caribbean night, millions of microscopic dinoflagellates carry on their ancient rhythm, illuminating the water one tiny flash at a time, while quietly inviting each new generation of researchers to look a little closer and continue exploring one of nature's most beautiful living mysteries. The story of Mosquito Bay is also closely connected to the history of the island that surrounds it. Vieques may appear peaceful today, with its quiet beaches, rolling hills, and protected coastlines, but its recent past was shaped by events very different from the calm evenings experienced by modern visitors. Understanding that history helps explain why so much of the island's natural environment has remained remarkably undeveloped, and why conservation has become such an important part of its future. Vieques lies only a few miles east of Puerto Rico, stretching for about 21 miles from one end of the island to the other. Although relatively small, its location has long made it strategically important within the Caribbean. For centuries, fishermen, farmers, and small communities lived along its shores, relying upon the surrounding sea for food and transportation. Life generally followed the familiar rhythms of the tropics, with fishing boats leaving before sunrise, crops growing in the warm climate, and coastal villages quietly overlooking the same turquoise waters that continue to attract visitors today. During the 20th century, however, much of the island entered an entirely different period. Beginning in the early 1940s, large areas of Vieques were acquired by the United States Navy for military purposes. Training facilities, ammunition storage areas, and live fire exercises occupied significant portions of the island for decades. While much of this activity took place away from Mosquito Bay itself, the presence of the military dramatically influenced how the island developed. Large sections remained closed to ordinary development, limiting construction across wide stretches of coastline that might otherwise have become heavily populated resorts or residential communities. For the people who lived on Vieques, these changes affected everyday life in many ways. Communities adapted to new boundaries, access to certain areas became restricted, and the sound of military exercises occasionally became part of life on an island that had once been known primarily for fishing and agriculture. At the same time, because development remained limited across much of the coastline, extensive natural habitats survived with relatively little urban expansion. It was an unexpected consequence of a complicated period in the island's history. While the social and political impacts were deeply significant for local residents, many coastal ecosystems remained remarkably intact simply because large-scale commercial development never occurred. By the closing years of the 20th century, public discussion about the future of Vieques had grown increasingly important. Residents, environmental groups, and political leaders raised concerns about the long-term effects of military activities and the future use of the island. After many years of public debate, military training operations eventually came to an end in the early years of the 21st century. Large portions of the former training areas were transferred for conservation, environmental restoration, and wildlife protection, beginning a new period focused on preserving much of Vieques' remarkable natural landscape. Today, extensive areas of the island form part of the Vieques National Wildlife Refuge, protecting beaches, coastal lagoons, forests, and important habitats for countless species of wildlife. Sea turtles return to nest on quiet, sandy beaches during the warmer months, while migratory birds use the island as an important resting point during their long seasonal journeys across the Caribbean. Native reptiles, shorebirds, and marine animals continue thriving within habitats that remain among the least developed in the region. These protected landscapes not only safeguard wildlife, but also help preserve the broader environmental conditions that benefit ecosystems like Mosquito Bay. Environmental restoration has continued for many years. Scientists, engineers, conservation organizations, and government agencies have worked together to monitor former military lands, restore damaged habitats where necessary, and protect sensitive coastal ecosystems for future generations. Much of this work takes place quietly behind the scenes, involving careful surveys of plants, wildlife, soils, and water quality. The goal is not simply to preserve beautiful scenery, but to maintain healthy ecosystems capable of supporting the extraordinary diversity of life found across the island. For visitors arriving today, it can be difficult to imagine how much history surrounds the peaceful landscapes they see. The roads are quiet, the beaches often feel wonderfully uncrowded, and the nights remain dark enough for thousands of stars to fill the sky above Mosquito Bay. The absence of widespread coastal development has become one of the island's greatest strengths, allowing many natural habitats to retain the character they have held for generations. In a world where many coastlines have been transformed by rapid growth, Vieques offers a glimpse of a Caribbean environment that still feels remarkably connected to its natural rhythms. This unique combination of history and conservation gives Mosquito Bay an even deeper significance. The glowing water is not simply an isolated natural phenomenon, but part of a larger landscape shaped by both human decisions and natural processes across many decades. Mangrove forests continue filtering the shoreline, wildlife refuges protect surrounding habitats, and careful stewardship helps preserve one of the world's most remarkable biological displays. Every evening, as darkness settles across the island and the first glowing ripples appear beneath the stars, Mosquito Bay quietly reminds us that protecting nature often means understanding the history that shaped it, learning from the past while carefully preserving its extraordinary beauty for generations still to come. Mosquito Bay remains a living expression of the relationships that sustain Vieques, from mangrove roots and sheltered water to microscopic dinoflagellates responding with blue light. Its history shows how scientific understanding, local knowledge, conservation, and careful stewardship can deepen our appreciation of a natural wonder without diminishing its mystery. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the glowing waters of Bahia Mosquito. If you enjoyed the documentary, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and explore the playlist for more relaxing journeys through history, science, and the natural world.